So now that people are finally understanding there is no Toronto-Montreal hockey rivalry, you can't have a rivalry where they haven't met in the playoffs in 42 years. Now, at one point, the teams had a rivalry pretty well between the start when Toronto and Montreal were both in the NHL to about 1979, which is the last time Toronto played Montreal. Now, Montreal has had more successful rivalries against the Nordiques, the Bruins, the Flyers, the Penguins, the Rangers since 79, but some people are under the delusion there's still a rivalry. There is no rivalry. The Leafs killed it. Look at Ken Dryden's book. But for the sake of argument, for the 5 people out there that think that the Montreal Canadiens should have won all those cups and should have won in 79, we're going to go over the 1979 quarterfinal series where Montreal did play Toronto, and Montreal was pretty well dominant for 90% of the series. Now, Toronto made the playoffs that year, pretty well a 500 team. Montreal went undefeated against the Maple Leafs in the regular season, winning 3-2, 6-3, and 2-1, and also tying 4-4. Now, that was the year, of course, that Guy Lafleur had 129 big points with 52 goals. Now, Toronto entered the playoffs 34, 33, and 13, won their first round series. Montreal was 52, 17, 11, which was a drop for them, no pun intended, because in the last few years before this, they had averaged between 56 and 59 wins a season. Of course, winning 60 in 77 and almost 60 in 76. Now, that year, Toronto's offense was okay, but their defense was terrible. They gave up more than 3 goals a game. The goals Montreal scored, they were second of the 17 teams. Now, the first game of the series was no contest. Montreal won 5-2. Second game, again in Montreal, he won 5-1. So we figured to go back to Toronto, he might show a little bit of the strength that he did in the 78 series between Montreal and Toronto. There was a lot of hype for the series because the young Mike Palmateer was a net for Toronto. He was very consistent during the season. Now, what happened in Game 3 was kind of bizarre. It went into double overtime, and of all people, their former WHA star they had drafted, Cam Connor, scored on a non-shot in double overtime and indirectly caused Palmateer not to be available for Game 4, and the backup Paul Harrison took over. That game, Montreal had led 4-0 until the midway in the second period. Toronto scored 4 straight goals, and of course in overtime the classic incident where Tiger Williams took a penalty. Robinson scored in overtime. Williams tried to attack the referee and linesman after the game, didn't shake hands with the Habs, and Robinson basically had to go over them and talk him down. Overall, a very, not say mediocre series. Montreal was completely dominant, but he had quite a bit of injuries because for several games, like 4 games, LaRouche didn't play the whole series. Connor was brought in. Steve Shutt was injured. Pat Hughes was brought in. Had a really, really strong Game 4. And again, Réjean Houle was out as well as, and Rod Langway didn't play the whole series. Now, top player for the series, who should have won the Conn Smythe that year, was Jacques Lemaire. He had 8 big points in 4 games, 4 goals. Robinson had 8 points. Lafleur had 8 points. Gainey scored twice. So did Shutt, so did Lambert, with Pat Hughes and Mondeau and Napier and Cam Connor, of course, the overtime winner in Game 3. Dryden had a good series. He only gave up 10 goals in the 4 games for again another strong performance. Now for Toronto, the big two, Darryl Sittler and Lennon McDonald, combined for 9 points. Sittler had 3 counters. McDonald had 3 as well. Maloney had 2 goals. Walter McKechnie scored. So did Rocky Sagnuck, who was showed great potential as a playoff rookie that year. But another factor as well, Ron Ellis and Salming had really good defensive core in the series. Unfortunately, The other players didn't do well. I give an example. Ian Turnbull had a terrible series. He was -4. Second, Pat Boutet -2. Burrows -3. Gardner -3. Jerry Butler -3. And they were always reliable. Jimmy Jones on defense was -2 for the series. Anyway, it was rough. Again, Palmetier lost 3 games in the series, despite making numerous key saves. And Harrison played part of 2 games, giving up 7 goals on 43 shots. Now, various YouTubes are online. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the full game 1 and the full game 3 and 4 are available. There's Francophone highlights of Game 3, especially the Cam Connor goal, the big celebration afterwards. But when a player like Cam Connor, and there's more references of this in the Ken Dryden book, The Unluckiness of Cam Connor. He was a rising star at the WHA. When he finally made it to the NHL, he kind of didn't meet expectations. Because, ladies and gentlemen, as we know, I call it the WHA baby Canadians. You had Langway, Napier, you had Cam Connor. It was a WHA experiment, and it did work. But it's too bad about Connor. Connor could have easily been another Chuck Lefley or Murray Wilson. He had good talent, but you can always say I scored one of the biggest overtime goals against Toronto of the 1970s. Now, after 1979, both Montreal and Toronto fell away. Montreal fell away from the dynasty years. Toronto had inconsistent results for almost more than a decade, and especially the Brophy era, he started to fade. And but talking about the rivalry, I mean, I hope you take it the right way. 42 years when you don't meet in the playoffs. A rivalry is done by playing when something is on the line. A regular season game, there's very little on the line. Toronto was Western Conference up until COVID. You put it in the same division. But there's no indication that the modern Montreal fan, maybe the Toronto fan, because most Toronto fans are just ludicrously one-sided, thinking that you should win the Stanley Cup because of the regular season. I kid you not. You don't give it a Stanley Cup for winning individual awards there. You got to win. Toronto has won nothing since 1979. But consider this, ladies and gentlemen. Since the original 6 is no longer original 6, how many Stanley Cups has Toronto won? 0. Since the original 6 became 12 and they expanded, how many cups has Montreal won? Well, let's do the math. 68, 69, 71, 73, 76, 77, 78, 79, 86, and 93. Sure, Montreal has never won a cup in 27 years, but neither has any other Canadian team. It's a different NHL. It's more corporate. Gary Bettman runs it. But like I said, there is people in nursing homes right now with dementia are waking up from a long sleep and watching the TV and thinking that Mike Palmetier is still playing for Toronto, and that's Dave Burrows making a mistake in his own like he did all the time back in the day. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching the series this week, you're going to hear a lot of hype, but the only hype is this. Montreal and Toronto this year, I can 99.9999% guarantee they're not going to win the Cup. There's no way the strength of Washington and the Western Conference teams are going to be battled this year. You got Tampa Bay as well. You got Colorado. You got William Caillé. My cousin plays with the Golden Knights. The West is stronger. Or look at the Boston Bruins. Boston Bruins would have won the division with literally 45 wins if they were put in the what they call the Canadian Conference. Now, what they really should have done, which they didn't do, you should have did the original 6 conference. Now, that would have been interesting because Montreal had the same rivalry with Detroit, Chicago, those teams, the Rangers. I would have loved to see that. Take all those teams together. But anyway, I wish luck for the... and even if Toronto wins, it doesn't make up for 42 years. You know, Moses was 40 years in the wilderness, right? Even Moses found his way home. And you're still walking around. No cup in 54 years and no significant playoff victory besides 93 in, oh God, since the Islanders. So all you have is the Islanders and 93 St. Louis. So that means 2 significant playoff victories since 1967? That's a disgrace. Anyway, thanks for listening. Bye.